Good evening. Welcome to Conspiracy Cafe. I'm your host, George Freund. We're with you now. We're with you to the end. We always hope the end is a very long, long way off, but it might come sooner than we think. We've been faced with quite a cash crunch crisis here on the old Conspiracy Cafe, brought to you on that channel. We had a lot of donations over the Christmas holidays that we put to good use by investing in this show and at this station to give you what I think is a better product. And unfortunately, we're reaching the end of that rope really fast, and we may not even be able to proceed into April at that rate. So we do humbly beseech those who follow this type of programming to donate, send, solicit, or whatever, any sorts of funds that they can to help us along, because we'd hate to have to stop next month. But we will go back to the old bunker to bunker broadcast if we have to. I can afford that, so our good friend in Texas, Denise, we save your Ulysses S. Grants to the very end when we're right up against the wall, and we'll be using those in the last week of March. We had to transfer the ownership of the websites over to yours truly, myself. We want to really thank our web designer, web host, webmaster John for all the hard work he's done, including paying for the thing over the years that he's put this wonderful thing together. And it is just a joy for a lot of people to come into and find a home where they can get alternative news and views, and hopefully a little bit of guidance to the truth from someone who does a small show, but that does seem to be a catalyst for much bigger things, because we're not afraid to sacrifice the sacred cows. And there's quite a few sacred cows. One of the most popular shows, and a group of the most popular shows we've done, of course, centered around Sandy Hook and the school massacre and all that sort of thing. And we do have a determined push by Dianne Feinstein, the California senator, to ban guns. And there's just, out of the blue, I come across an article that she used to own a gun, had a concealed carry permit. She was in fear of her life. So-called terrorists shot holes in her window or something like that a long time ago, back in the 70s, and she was afraid. Then I started to look into some of the fine details that came with this article, and that she was actually on the scene of the assassination of the mayor of San Francisco, George Moscone, and the gay activist and city commissioner, which they made the big movie about with Sean Penn, Harvey Milk. She was the only witness to see the alleged killer, Dan White, leave the scene. She was the first person on the scene. She entered into the office where Mr. Milk was shot. And then this is where I find one of my Columbo moments in reading this small little article, because she openly admits she was there and says that's the whole raison d'etre for her stance on gun control, is she had to walk in on the body of Harvey Milk, and to check his pulse, she put her fingers in the bullet holes. I've taken a lot of first aid courses, seen trauma of various sorts and descriptions, but I've never been taught or showed in any way, shape, or form that you stick your fingers in wounds to feel the pulse. Usually it was the wrist, the carotid. Then there's that small, nagging little detail. The killer blew his head off. You don't have to look for a pulse, and there's no sense putting your fingers in the bullet holes, because the biggest hole is the one through his skull that you could probably put a fist in. So you know as soon as you look at the scene, he's gone. And nobody's bringing him back. And then you'd have to wonder, well, why would you want to tamper with the forensic evidence and get it all over yourself like, a kid eating his spaghetti? Maybe it's because it covers up the blood splatter where you pulled the trigger, eh? Because if you can set up a school massacre and kill a whole bunch of children, who says somewhere down the road you didn't have some hands-on experience? So I just started to, casually look through some of the fine details of this, and I'll be working on this on the weekend. That's how I'm going to chain myself to the floor, because I got a pile of stuff this thick to go through, so that I can, come up with hard and fast details and links to those details so you can see it for yourself. On the website, we just put up a simple little preparatory piece just to say, this is what I see and how I see it Even when you look on the Wikipedia material on George Moscone, the deceased mayor, assassinated mayor of San Francisco, killed in 1978. You know who got him into power? You know who his right-hand man was to get him elected? Jimmy Jones from Jonestown was his man. Had his hand, you forget about those fine details, had his hand so deep in San Francisco politics. And not only did he get the mayor elected, he got the district attorney and the sheriff elected. The three most powerful positions in office. This assassination happened on November the 27th. That's a 9/11 if you play with the numbers, 1978. On November the 18th, that was the day of Jonestown. It was the massive Kool-Aid party. In one of the set pieces of material I have, it says Dianne Feinstein was a member of the People's Temple. She's a cult android of the CIA, always has been, always will be. If we can show the big screen here, compadre. They stole my lightning picture, so I'll have to repost that later when I get home. And, just for a joke, we have the Kool-Aid man coming through the wall here, posted over the bodies. This is a picture, a still from the movie Milk. Sean Penn is a great method actor, to be like the street tough and play a gay activist in this movie is, maybe insulting and offending to a lot of people, but, he can play a lot of roles. And this is supposed to be Dan White raising the revolver to shoot him. In one set of articles, I find that Dianne Feinstein had the same make, model, and caliber Smith & Wesson 38 caliber Chief Special. An article's just been put out by a former FBI agent to say, no, she had a .357 Magnum Chief Special, which may well be true. I'll have to look a little deeper into that. But it still shoots 38 caliber bullets as well. And then he said that Dan White had a Model 10 Smith & Wesson service revolver from his time as a policeman in the San Francisco Police Department. He was also in the 101st Airborne, top-notch American commando and killer. Seemingly he had a grudge or something against these people, or maybe he was just induced to do some things. In the movie, we see him being ordered into the police office in City Hall to talk to people, coming out a different shade and going on his mission because they showed him something that made him decide what he was going to do. He got off with what's called the Twinkie defense. He got 5 years for manslaughter, involuntary manslaughter. California laws were completely changed and turned upside down because his addiction to junk food upset his blood sugar, made him go on a psychotic killing rampage, or maybe it was some of his MK Ultra training at the hands of this fine woman here, Dianne Feinstein. Now, this picture is very, very unique. And it's only on a forum like this where we will take a wooden stake and drive it into the heart of the New World Order and do the sacrifice. Look at that eye. See the lazy eye? We've talked about lazy eyes on this show before. Let's look at some other people with a lazy eye. And then it may make a little more sense to you. There's some people with lazy eyes, except they have the opposite one that's lazy. I also said that they had a microchip insertion because they all seem to have a certain a little wound opposite the eye. Lee Harvey Oswald, Jared Lee Loughner, and of course Sirhan Sirhan. There's his little microchip mark. You can see it better on that slide right there. But the opposite eye is lazy. So when we go back to Dianne Feinstein, we see she's got the lazy eye as well. And then the way she wears her hair is a good place to put your microchip. No one's ever going to notice. Very, very strange. And then we have, what we call qui bono, who benefits, the old Roman adage, well, who benefited? She got to be mayor. It paved the way. If there was two people that needed their asses kicked to get out of the way to put her into power and to clean up all the dirt, because at Jonestown, they killed a congressman when he landed there. That got it all going. And then they massacred with the Kool-Aid. All the people there, hundreds and hundreds of them. They had to clean up. Well, you can't have out, Mayor Moscone and Jimmy Jones are bros, real bros. You got to get rid of the prick and fast. So a week later, they shoot him to death. And then you go, okay, we take him out. What's going to happen next? These are back in the good old days, when the CIA was still full of all the guys who killed Kennedy. What do you got to do? Well, you got this upstart gay activist, Harvey Milk. He's got a really good chance of getting elected mayor. You watch the movie, look at the end, you see the just legions of people coming to his funeral. It'll blow your mind. He could easily have been elected mayor. And then what could happen to a guy like that? So you get, into the major power base of Southern California. Just paves the way. One day, you could be governor. We might never ever had a Governor Reagan becoming president. We might have had Governor Milk becoming president. And then there's things about Harvey Milk that just aren't explained. He was a diver in the Navy. He's a Korean War veteran. Got out of the Navy as an officer. Trained divers. Top-notch job in the American military. Then I look up his ship, and it's, was built after World War II, in service. Then around 1949, falls off the screen. And then sometime in the mid-50s, they talk about it again. Well, wait a minute. It was in the Korean War. Harvey was there. He was a chief petty officer on the ship at the time. They don't even mention in most writings about the ship that it was even in the Korean War. Harvey was, and he was on that ship. But when you look at the ship, there's no mention of the ship. Very strange. Very strange indeed. It's like there was a black cloud following the ship and him to some degree in the intelligence agencies. But what if we put forward a conspiracy? You see, Dan is supposed to have changed bullets midway between these shootings. Because he used to be one of the city commissioners too, he could float around in the back corridors, which were private and off limits to the public. It's only Dianne Feinstein that said she saw him leave an office and go somewhere else and that she tried to communicate with him. What if she ran into the office and finished the pricks off? The first shootings were done with regular lead bullets. And then they say he took out a few bullets, a few spent casings, and put in hollow point bullets, jacketed hollow points, I imagine, to finish him off. So it wasn't just like it was an act of violence, because Mayor Moscone was shot. He went down. He probably would have lived. The coroner said those first shots were not fatal. Then the assassin came in and actually put the gun in his ear and fired 2 shots into the ear to take him out. I think we have a very, very big kettle of fish there. Something that's, so far back, the time capsule, we're talking almost 2 generations now. But this wicked witch of Washington may have actually done the dirty deed. It's only because they control the police. It's, the temple controlled the district attorney, controlled the sheriff, control how the investigation's going to pan out. They write the paper. They can make up whatever fiction story they want. Because they lie. They lie all the time. Even before I got here, I'm reading about some guy supposed to have killed a rabbi in New York in 1990. Wrong. He spent 20-something years in prison for nothing. They just let him out. They screwed up. Framed the wrong guy. Guess you can't frame the right guy. He deserves it. So Feinstein's bill is starting to lose a little bit of its steam. Maybe other people are starting to figure this out. But where I have to, really wonder on how the world is run is when you have the big media players on Genesis like Jones, on InfoWars, or Joyce on the Power Hour. You have to wonder, this is the golden football to completely save your nation from being vanquished. to avert the Civil War, to put the demon back in the bottle and throw it far out into the sea where it'll never be found again. And it's like high noon. I'm having trouble finding some deputies. You want to fight the Civil War? Go right ahead. Enjoy. You're so far removed from war you don't even know what it is. But when it really gets tight and tough, and you got to eat lead and go through what all these other countries got. When America's got 35, 40 million refugees. When you got mass graves all over the place to put people down and have to worry about the nuclear stockpile and whether it's going to be used from one side or another side. To say a few words, to give a little humble credit to the little guy up north here in Toronto, can go a long way. But we always like to take the bumpy road. So I have to wonder, I really do. This is the wooden stake to drive through their heart. We did that right after Sandy Hook with the police tapes, and then it just went everywhere. Everybody picked up their rocks and started throwing them. Because you knew you're fighting for your very lives. Don't drop the ball, because it's going to be a big heavy steel one. It'll crush your foot and you'll never walk again. 3 more states propose bills to resist federal gun control. Kentucky, Bill SB 129. Montana, House Bill 302. Alaska, House Bill 69. And they're putting it in regard to interstate commerce. It's something that's constitutionally protected too. Colorado sheriffs, where they have passed a law, have been told by the state that if you don't enforce these laws, they're not going to pay you. They'll cut off your wages. Yummy, yummy. Strange things happening in Colorado. Very strange things indeed. Of course, one of the biggest ones is, we've had one of those Manchurian muffin shootings back in the day at Aurora, Colorado. And it is something that is very, 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 very important and disturbing. So this is our so-called assassin, who looks like he's completely and totally whacked out, James Holmes. They want to use truth serum on him to make him talk. Funny thing about this is one of the experts, Dr. August Piper, a Seattle-based psychiatrist, said that it's not the road to truth. People can still lie under the influence of Amytal, the drug they want to use, and they're susceptible to outside suggestion. It's doubtful in determining the state of mind of something that happened like this shooting 8 months ago. The defendant is highly susceptible to pressure. And then one of the other bizarre little things that happened in Colorado, maybe it's being swept under the rug, it got out and then, it just doesn't gather wings and fly. The head of the Prison Bureau, Colorado Department of Corrections, Tom Clements, was killed in his home in Monument, Colorado. Some guy just comes up, knocks on the door, he answers the door. Hey man, what's happening? Boom, 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 boom. We didn't get to say if that was Dianne Feinstein or not, or if they had a twisted eye or whatever. Person got away and they don't really have a suspect at this point in time. He's new to the job. He started in January 2011 being appointed by Governor Hickenlooper. He originally came from Missouri. Should have stayed there. Too late now. Maybe they'll bury him there and he can stay there forever. There's no such things as conspiracy. Hey there, Mr. Clemens. Fire this thing from your mind. But see, life works in a certain way. Works at the speed of the predator. And even when you are with the predators, you think you're a predator and nothing can get you. There's always another predator can bite your ass. And this guy's a goner because he doesn't understand the big C word. So one of the things that someone sent me as a little joke about gun control concerned a general in the Australian Army, Major General Peter Cosgrove. He was interviewed on a radio station about guns and children. So the interviewer says to him, "So General Cosgrove, what are the things you're going to teach the young boys when they visit your base?" "We're going to teach them climbing, canoeing, archery, and shooting." Female interviewer, "Shooting? That's a bit irresponsible, isn't it?" General Cosgrove, "I don't see why. They'll be properly supervised on the rifle range." Female interviewer, "Don't you admit that this is a terribly dangerous activity to be teaching children?" General Cosgrove, "I don't see how. We'll be teaching them proper rifle discipline before they even touch a firearm." Female interviewer, "But you're equipping them to become violent killers." General Cosgrove, "Well, ma'am, you're equipped to be a prostitute, but you're not one, are you?" End of interview. So just because you got it doesn't mean you're going to misuse it, does it? Just means you got it. And that's something we would hope some people will see. There's a big FEMA disaster drill coming out. Guy running for governor in Nevada for the 2014 election has come up with the fact that there's going to be, according to FEMA, a zombie UFO crash disaster exercise, full-scale disaster exercise, April 27th, 2013. Exercise was planned in Moscow, Idaho. 100 participants. FEMA pulled down their page after it was exposed, and only members can see the information now. What they're concerned about is the government has created a biochemical weapon that can induce zombie-like behaviors in humans and therefore assist in mass murder events to promote global depopulation without taking the blame. You see this in TV shows. So many popular TV shows now involve zombies, games, that sort of thing. Big turnoff to me. I'm not that crazy about zombies, although I guess you could say there's been some classic good zombie movies. Charlton Heston's was probably one of the best way back when, with modern ones as well, to show that the idea is not dead, that they probably are working on a drug like that and hoping to get it out to you quickly. We said on one of our previous shows that when they were going after the police chiefs in England, there's probably a reason for it. Well, the British press give us the reason that I said the reason was before we even knew what the reason was. Celebrities, politicians, and VIPs had their sex attack files hidden from investigating officers by police top brass. So super executive officers sealed off all the files on the hoi polloi so that lower ranking officers could never see them, and they were protected in their crimes. And that would include Jimmy Savile and former Rochdale MP Cyril Smith, mentioned specifically in the article. You see, birds of a feather stick together and cover for each other. And what was their reward now? Well, now they're going after some of these guys just to give them a little whipping, keep them honest. Ex-Daily Mirror editor Richard Wallace hauled in on this Operation Weeting, along with several other executives in the British media. They weren't charged with anything. They were just arrested and harassed to some degree. But this is a major scandal of the greatest proportions, because we say it goes pretty much right to the top. Vatican denies dirty war allegations. Of course, we finished our blog. We won't have time to go into it because we only do about an hour here, and this blog alone is probably enough to take up 20 minutes. But we have written about Petrus Romanus, his connections to the grand old times in Argentina. We get into the the actual building of the Roman Church, the Nicene conferences, what Jesus himself said, what the Pope said, and how the fact that the last prophecy of Petrus Romanus didn't come from St. Malachi. That was invented in 1820 by the Vatican. How his works were put away for 400 years and then reinstated, written by the Vatican and sent out. So the last Pope, according to him, really is Pope Benedict XVI. And part of the changing of the guard is to get him out of the picture and not be Pope. So he resigns. But then, there was also prophecies saying that there would be conflict at the end. We see our John Paul I being greeted by John Paul II, probably saying, hey, get your ass out of my chair, boy, I'm taking over. But that was one of the prophecies, the Pope of the Half Moon, the 33-day Pope, the one who tried to clean things up. They got rid of him fast. And then, of course, if we play with numbers and Roman numerals, Vicarius, Filii Dei, 666. They don't hide it. Of course, he's a Jesuit. Operation Condor, the CIA did that all through South and Central America, getting rid of, anyone who was a threat to them. This was a big deal for the Jesuit order to clean up the Catholic Church, Roman Church, I should say, because they're not true Catholics. At that level, worked hand in glove with these juntas to kill people. You see the Jesuit sign, you see the Argentine flag, the Jesuit oath we have here too, that they swear that they're going to, just take you out, man. Anybody. So basically what you had back in those days was another Inquisition. And our cardinal, at that time he wasn't a cardinal, but he did nothing to stop this in Argentina, where the Chilean cardinal spoke up, while Silva Henriquez spoke up, saved many lives. And then we see, various personages, Henry Kissinger with the general of the dictators here in Argentina, George Videla, getting communion from what is said to be George Mario Bergoglio, the new pope. And then just in case that isn't him, well, hey, the boys in the band from the Dirty War go to see the Pope at the time anyway, shake hands, everybody's happy, smiley. And there's our George Mario Bergoglio with General George Videla, everybody's happy. How many people you throw out of a helicopter today, George? Oh, maybe 50, 60. Hey, good man, you could be a Jesuit. Maybe he is. And the boys in the band, all together, the rock that the church was built on, the rock that Jesus sat on. A little bit of a difference there. One rock, two rocks. One rock, two rock. You got to compare. Dare to compare. That's why I would classify myself primarily as a pre-Constantine Christian, because that's who really started spoiling the broth. A lot of the things the Jesuit order believe in, things that come from, the Roman setup is the Pope ought to be honored by all with divine honor, with greater genuflection due to Christ himself. I kind of disagree with that. Reading of Holy Scripture is an origin of heresy and a schism and the source of blasphemy. Don't read the book, just do what we tell you to do. We'll read the book for you because we got it in Latin and you don't understand that. It used to be a crime to read the Bible or to have one, believe it or not. The Pope has the power of changing Scripture and adding to it and taking from it according to his will. You better get a good guy then, eh? Roman doctrine is Catholic, pure, divine, saving, ancient, and true. Protestant is false, erroneous, blasphemous, accursed, heretical, pernicious, seditious, and fabulous. Pronounce our parents accursed who educated us in that heretical faith. We curse those who also excite in us any doubts concerning the Roman Catholic faith and those who also served us with that accursed cup. Holy Scripture is imperfect and a dead letter until it is explained by the Supreme Pontiff and allowed by him to be read by the laity. We swear that as long as a drop of blood remains in our veins, we will persecute the accursed Protestant doctrine by all its means in our power, secretly, openly, by violence and stratagem, by word and deed, and even with the sword. Friendly bunch of guys. So that's why I just like to cut to the chase and go right back to the beginning and before Constantine and sit on the rock with Jesus. So we had a guy here, the president goes to Israel and his beast breaks down. So this is his big limo. Seemingly, the driver made a silly mistake and he put gasoline in a diesel engine. Well, that could happen if you're an idiot. I don't think they hire an idiot to be the president's driver. So why did they do this? There was like scuttlebutt rumors last week. I didn't have time to get into that. They might try to pull a fast one on Obama while he's over there and whack him or something like that. So, maybe that's part and parcel. Well, the guy wasn't silly. He was just getting Obama out of the line of fire, because then they moved him by helicopter across town until they got the other car. They always carry two of those things. There's the super, multi-ton armored 5-inch steel plate. Like, this thing's better than one of those tanks Homeland Security's going to get. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie The Dictator. You can go to me because they'll have to see me. Did you see the movie The Dictator, Hugh? No, it's classic, funny, Yeah, so the guy's got the big beard, and whenever somebody does something wrong, he walks by and he goes, and that tells all his handlers that they're supposed to kill that guy and take him away, right? So, hey, this is the driver of the limo, right? You put gasoline in a diesel engine, Obama walks by, and they're taking you out, pal. You're finished. But like I say, I can't see anybody being that stupid. I get the feeling that what happened is he did something to pull him out of the bacon. This is a close-up of the beast here from the front end. There's the beast in the car waving. We'll get into that. He's a happy beast. People aren't too happy. It's coming up to Passover and they close all the roads. He's happy. I hate your guts, but I'll kiss you anyway. And you can just see that, hey, a little bit more and we can feel each other's butts or check for the wallets. What a tour. Of course, Obama stays at the King David Hotel. That's where the Irgun, the Jewish terrorist network, blew the bloody thing up and killed a whole bunch of British soldiers way back in the day. He's got a 600-person entourage. He's going to occupy all 233 rooms in the hotel. So I guess Netanyahu and Perez don't put their hands over their hearts because maybe they don't have one. I don't know. Some people say they're all cloned 6 ways from Sunday. He says the U.S. will support Israel all the way along. Israel's Channel 10 said, to tell the truth, they can't stand one another. And that's probably the truth. Our Palestinian friends can't stand them too much either. A lot of protesting. I Have a Dream, Martin Luther King, burning them in effigy, burning the American flags. Of course, they never burn the Admiralty flag. They always burn, pretty much what's closer to the real American flag. So they're not too happy with Mr. Obama because their rights and freedoms are stepped on. Let's go into Jordan next, and we're on our way. And there's a funny one here. This is a History Channel show on the Bible and a character in it. And people just pick right out. He says, hey, this guy looks like Obama. He plays Satan in this 10-part miniseries on the History Channel. He's an acclaimed actor, Mehdi Ouzani. He's from Morocco. He's been in many religious type of things before. He was in Heath Ledger's The Four Feathers, 2006 version of 10 Commandments, and the TV movie David in 1997, and Jeremiah in 1998. They mention in the article, although they don't show pictures. I missed this one. This is one you just you take home for dinner. HBO's Game of Thrones featured a fake George W. Bush head impaled on a stake in its first season. I don't watch TV much. I guess there's one I missed. Bush's head impaled on a stake. So, of course, Netanyahu's warning America, the whole world's going to come to an end. We got to kill Iran or do whatever we got to do. He just got sworn in. It's 8 weeks after his election on January 22nd. Just to show his good faith, Obama's going to see the Dead Sea Scrolls. He's going to lay a wreath at the grave of Theodore Herzl, the father of Zionism. The symbolism is very, very cool. They say they crossed the red line at the Red Sea. The red line, the chemical weapons were used in Syria by the rebels. 26 people were killed, including 16 Syrian army soldiers. So they're probably hoping that, if we get chemical weapons into play and you respond with some chemical weapons, then we can attack you and get involved in the war because you did it. So the timing is very, very strange that this just happens before the Obama visit. So what is the red line? Is the red line the rebels using chemical weapons? Were they even chemical weapons? Some of the pictures I saw that go along with this from InfoWars, it just looked like me and Hugh took off our shirts and laid on a stretcher. You don't really see these horrid, horrible burns and, You got to have some pretty terrible wounds to kill a human being. Like they're just blatantly obvious. Both these guys looked like they were just lying on a stretcher and there was nothing wrong with them. At least nothing that's seriously wrong with them. The Daily Mail was exposing this chap here as a former American soldier. He's the talk of the town, Eric Haroon, 30, of Phoenix. Is he someone working with the new Al-Qaeda in the area, participating in whatever atrocities need to be participated in? He has videos on SyriaTube. He was injured in a car accident. He's on a disability pension, so he never went into war. He's into war now. There's no doubt about that, fighting with these guys. So when he was contacted by the media, he said he was in Turkey sipping a martini, shaken, not stirred. But he's a converted Muslim. Muslims don't drink. So he used to be in the mortgage business in Phoenix, Arizona, but, you know, what did John Lennon used to sing? Happiness is a warm gun. And there's our good buddy there. So is he part of the process to get everything started over there to take us into the next jihad? We get a new leader in Free Syria, a Muslim extremist, Ghazan Hitto, chose to be the new interim prime minister by all the groups that are involved in the rebel movement. The broadest base of them being fundamental Islam and Al-Qaeda. Say he's a good guy, and he comes from Texas. So you can't go wrong. He's got to be a good guy. He's going to be the new de facto prime minister. And then from the Middle East, we go a little bit north and we get into some bigger doo-doo. Of course, they're going to sell austerity in the European Union. They're going to go after all these tax evaders. Government spending is going to rise. But of course, as they go after all these people, as they do all their cutbacks, there's a great decline in tax revenue and an increase in welfare spending. So whatever you save, you sort of have to spend. You even have to spend money to go after these so-called tax evaders. Ex-JP Morgan chief Ina Drew says the multi-billion-dollar losses her department experienced were not her fault. She said the bank's risk models were flawed. Staff hid information from her. She's testifying at the Senate Permanent Committee on Investigations. The bank lost $6.2 billion, what they called the London Wales trade. Wales because these trades were so big they could move markets. Then, of course, the big news in finance is Cyprus. We're up against the wall there. It's not like, you know, we haven't said many, many times over on how to protect yourself. Because when it comes, you get a bank holiday. It doesn't mean you go to the beach and everything's fine. Holiday means there's no access to funds. So on Friday, without notice, they have a bank holiday, say they're taking certain percentages of people's savings in Cyprus. There was a run on the banks. They're open 24 hours with bank machines. They cleared out every bank machine on the island, which isn't a, you know, terrible lot of cash, I guess, compared to the deposits held, but, you know, people just panicked and got their money out. They might not be so stupid the next time. They might turn off the bank machines too, so you're not getting any money out of there either. Germany's forcing them to pay for the bailout. That could be you, could be me, could be anybody, because this is a bottomless pit. There's no filling it. There's no hope. It's just a matter of time. It's like the Titanic sinking. We've done images of the Titanic sinking and put, you know, countries at stake to say this is how. When it starts to go down, and it's every man for himself, and it gets really nasty. There may only be one small doorway with 500-600 people trying to get through it. It's kill or be killed to get through that doorway. Best place is not even to be on the ship. That's why I always say, you know, build your own lifeboat. Get off long before it happens and just row away. Don't even be on it when it sinks. Leave that for the other geniuses who don't believe in that C word, conspiracy. So there's probably, well, there's 1.1 million people on Cyprus, but there's probably a whole bunch of them now that understand the C word, because when they bent over, it hit them in the ass. Really long and hard. But they probably still haven't figured out, that if you change the channel, you might get a little upfront notice to get out of the way when the tidal wave comes. Russia is trying to move into Cyprus too. So one of their ministers, Michael Saras, is in Moscow to talk about what's going on. Gazprom is trying to say that we'll clean up your banking system if you allow us to have first dibs on gas reserves that may potentially exist off the island of Cyprus. So they'll do the bank restructuring and issue bonds. Of course, that completely takes Cyprus out of the fold of the European Union, technically. Maybe not physically, permanently, but it takes them out of that levy. And what does Russia want there? Russia wants a Mediterranean naval base. They only have one. They have the one in Syria, which may not be tenable for a very long period of time. One in Cyprus would come in very, very handy. There's a lot of Russians in Cyprus. There's also a lot of Russian laundry, like they call Cyprus the laundry machine for the Russian mob. There's just so much goes in there. The dollar figures for this loan that Cyprus has is they want a further 5 billion euros on top of a 5-year extension and lower interest rate on the 2.5 billion euro loan. And we're never going to see that happen again. Russia's handed over £2 billion, because this is a British article, to Cyprus to help them out. They had a vote to reject this. 36 of 56 deputies, that's 9/11, voted against it and 19 abstained. There wasn't anybody voted for it because they'd have hung you in the street. So they say there's something like 30 billion pounds of Russian money stashed on this island. Well, no wonder they want to raid it. Cyprus ranks as the largest source of foreign direct investment into Russia, money that is largely Russian in origin and passes through Cypriot banks before being sent back to Russia. So they wanted to take somewhere in the neighborhood of 5.8 billion euros directly from savers' bank accounts, depending on how much money you had and how many bullets you have and, who knows what else. So this joining of the European Union seemed to be the biggest mistake these idiots ever made. Now, will they do it in other countries? It's just like the ground erodes away from you. There's no stopping it. It just gets bigger and bigger, a hole and a hole and a hole and a hole and a hole until you're in something like the Grand Canyon and it keeps collapsing and falling in on you. There's no way out of it. They just get desperate. They have to suck up every last dime they can get their hands on. So will this happen in Greece, Portugal, Ireland, Spain, or Italy? And just the anticipation of it may get people to withdraw their money. And that might be part of the conspiracy to help it collapse faster, is to create a panic to get people to take their money out of the bank. One of the funny things is the Church of Cyprus, major shareholder in the Hellenic Bank. They own property and also a brewery. Happy priests are they. Actually offered to use the church assets, to sell off the church assets to help out. Now you gotta love that. That's something like Jesus would do. Say, look, hey, we got all these millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions, who knows? We'll help you out. Because basically what this is they call this the nuclear war on savings and wealth. A surprise assault. The precautionary savings of their own people get a nuclear war. And it sends an ominous message out. Are they trying to start a bank run? Yes. But don't run, walk swiftly. If you've got money in the bank, well, it's probably not the greatest thing in the world anymore. There's so many other things. You need things that are in your hand, like my glass of water. Because if it's not in your hand, it's not there. It can be taken away. So that's why I'm very, very big on you having things like precious metals in your hand. Russia's putting a permanent warship fleet in the Mediterranean. It could get nasty. Because generally, as we get to the bottom of all this, conflict is usually the result of some of these major fiascos. Former British Chancellor of the Exchequer, Alistair Darling, warned that raiding people's savings accounts could trigger bank runs across Europe. People will lose their confidence in the banks. I don't have any confidence in the banks. Not because of the banks per se or the systems, it's the banksters. We got all these gangsters at the top, cocaine cowboys, addicted to anything that you could ever imagine, money, power among them, thinking that they're God and they can do anything they want. I wouldn't be looking for somebody like that to trust my money with. Better not to have any money. Just get by with what you need. But there were panics in other places. In this article, they mentioned Northern Rock Bank in the UK suffered a major bank run. German Commerzbank chief George Kramer calls for a 15% tax on all financial assets. They have no choice. They have to take it. PIMCO CEO Mohammed El Arian warned that the brazen looting of people's bank accounts could trigger civil unrest. Well, they're kind of prepared for that too. Stock markets went down when this happened. Gold didn't go up near enough. It should have been like one of those panic launch it into orbit things. Just didn't happen enough. Stopped sliding, leveled off, went up a little bit, but not enough to signify the nature and gravity of the situation. They even promised the British vets that money that they lost would be compensated for. They lied. And then they always lie. Do we have videos, Comrade Hugh? Can we show the one on the Chase Bank? I need to see how fast things can happen. Sure, fire one. Okay, well, Comrade Hugh is telling me, there we go. Was that something? Okay. Hugh was telling me that we got no audio on this, which is a shame because it's a nice little news clip. Basically what happened is customers of Chase Bank found out all their balances were zero, which could be a benefit to a lot of people because if you had a big negative balance, it's zero. Well, bonus. But for the average person who had savings, that's not a bonus. And people panicked and this or that. It was just a computer glitch. Maybe the banks failed. They didn't tell us, but they got all those numbers back for everybody later, and everybody's happily ever after. So if we don't have sound, I guess we can cut the video there because that's not going to do us any big good. But it just goes to show you, you can't trust these banks. Everything you got is just like a little number. It's not even on a ledger sheet where I can just hold up the paper and say, see, this is my ledger sheet, you know, and it's got all the numbers on there. No, it's just little digital things that are there 1 minute and they're gone the next. And nobody knows what was there before. You got storable food, usable water, and supplies. Well, you know what they're for. You know where they are. Makes perfect sense. Fuel, precious metals, you have a little cash on hand. you don't have to worry about things like that. You just reach in your pocket and say, I got some cash on hand. Because basically what they're doing is stealing. They're taking away everything that isn't nailed down and then some. And then, of course, I hear the U.S. passed their budget today, so we're okay till September. In this little anecdote, they started talking about how they saved, 80-something million dollars on the old ledger sheet. And here's the ledger sheet from the daily history of debt results. We see this one? Okay, there we go. Sort of almost there. So in this little box here in the corner, you have the total public outstanding debt. So on one day, 85 billion is saved, and the next day it goes up 85 billion. It's just one day is going into further debt, 85 billion, just like that. So we cut and cut and cut 85 billion, and the next day it goes up 85 billion. Well, that accomplished a whole lot, didn't it? We can get rid of that stuff. Yeah, there we go. Christine Lagarde, that charming French lady who's got, all the big rings and the beautiful clothes that we've showed in past shows. Well, the cops raided her place. Something about a $270 million or pound payout to a guy named Bernard Tapie when she was finance minister. He's a convicted fraudster. She may have abused her position because he was with her political party. And then I think we all have to understand that Dominic Strauss-Kahn was framed, lecher that he is. But Mr. Tapie, the former head of Adidas in France, claims he was cheated out of millions by Credit Lyonnais Bank. So allegedly, Ms. Lagarde put this up to some sort of arbitration, and they decided to give him this money, and it really had nothing to do with her too much, but Mr. Strauss-Kahn was with the Socialist Party, and then Ms. Lagarde was with Sarkozy's UMP, and so was Mr. Tapie. So were they screwing around? Helping themselves at the old pig trough? North Korea is the other big one. There's new threats coming out today, just before we got here, new threats. They got to push the button soon. We're getting close to the 322 day. That's tomorrow. If you're late watching this show, it could be yesterday. Classic day for an attack. It's also coming up to Passover. That's going to start. Another classic time to pull something off, and we always hope and pray that the Passover will happen for you, that you don't have to get clobbered in what's going to come. North Korea is telling South Korea to leave the strategic southern islands. America's putting in more missile batteries in Alaska. We have 30 along the west coast. There's a possibility that we could see some action around there. Fort Greely in Alaska is going to get an investment of $1 billion. New radar tracking stations in Japan. Although these missile interceptors don't really work all that great. Hack attacks, same thing. South Korea, they hit the banks, they hit the TV stations. If you're not prepared, you're screwed. You got to be the bank of yourself, the store of yourself. You got to be prepared to go for a little while, just in case some electrons just don't make it to the certain computers, and keep everything going. Whatever you need, make sure you can get. Food and water are at the top of the list. Medicines, heat, gas, transportation, means of protecting yourself, first aid supplies. Have it handy, because if you don't have it handy and you need it, you're up the creek. So everybody's blaming everybody else. North Korea says they're hacked. South Korea says they're hacked by the North Koreans. Turns out some of the latest things I've seen say it's the Chinese. One of the good news items, though, of course, is the United States has backed off on the missile shield in Europe to some degree. Phase 4 has been bypassed. This is phase 1. You can see, like, it's supposed to be for Iran, but you cover a good part of Russia, and that's really put some sand in their eyes. This is the next phase for 2018. And we see we still have Russia boxed in very, very well. In this last phase, we see Russia saying, like, hey, I'm parking these big Iskander missiles here. So I've always said right from day one, that isn't even a threat yet. These little babies here, they can take out all of Europe. Flatten it, turn it into a parking lot. That's what you got to sweat about. And if putting in these missile interceptors or some of these radar things piss off the Russians enough that they got to consider global thermonuclear war, is there anything to think about? So anyway, we backed off a little bit there and moved our blocks to the Pacific. Bonus for us. And then we got some spies. Got Chinese spies working at NASA. Langley, Virginia Research Facility, Hampton, Virginia. So this guy, Bo Zhang, leaves the country abruptly, taking computer hard drives and all kinds of crunchy-munchy stuff on a one-way ticket back to the homeland, which is in America. Somebody ratted him out. The FBI picked him up, confiscated this material. He was employed as a contractor with the National Institute of Aerospace. Representative Frank Wolf in Congress clearly calls him a spy. And you got to wonder, this isn't the first time he's done it. He was there before and he went home with lots of stuff. This is the second time. So he had another laptop, an old hard drive, a SIM card, cell phone, a memory stick. He's well prepared to take his work home with him. Maybe he's not coming back anymore. And then one of the little links in this article, related link, even though it isn't related, talks about how the TSA humiliates a W amputee Marine by making him take off his prosthetic legs for inspection. Okay, let me get this right. Here's a Chinese spy, gets to take stuff out of NASA and go home with it. He's not stopped and searched at the airport until people really go after him. Here's a Marine who fought for his country. Whether he was misled or not is immaterial. The fact is he did fight for his country, did his duty. He was wounded. And he's put through a very, very difficult procedure. An insulting procedure, considering he's given so much. His legs to his country. Like, it's the trouble when you hire people that are just total morons and they just can't tell the difference. They can't judge people. They can't read people or whatever. You don't see the sweating BOSOF factor. You know, his copy of the Koran and his burn-proof ID that's supposed to be left behind after everything blows up. And they just take apart this veteran because they got nothing else to do. I think the least you could do is just shake his hand and say, thank you. And then he probably won't want to blow up the plane when he gets on it. There's something I can do for you, brother. And I at least pray for you. Forgiven so much. Instead, he's jerked around like that. Then we got another spy in Hawaii. So this 27-year-old Chinese woman is one of those interlopers to go after this guy who works as a civilian defense contractor at Pacific Command, Benjamin Bishop, 59. He's in jail now. Sex of a lifetime while it lasted, I guess. And now he's going to be doing some hard time, given secrets about American defenses in Hawaii and possibly the Pacific coast. He was a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army Reserve. Had secrets about nuclear weapons, missile defenses, war plans, radar systems, etc., etc., etc. He's also charged. Oregon company to sell drone defense to the public. It won't bring them down, but it's sure going to make their time difficult up there. A little too expensive for home use. We're running out of time. That's too bad. One little one, I guess, because war is always on the horizon. Lyndon Johnson tapes reveal Richard Nixon's treason. Richard Nixon sabotaged the Paris peace talks. The war would have been over in 1968. Instead, it had to go longer. Tens of thousands of Americans died. Hundreds of thousands of Vietnamese died because he kept the war going. Just like that. One man. Nobody chained the channel. Everybody just trusted these people blindly. This is from King of the Hill. My son loves this. Dale Gribble, one of the characters in here, always has this to say. Guns don't kill people. The government does. And as we see here from history, the government does. And as we said at the beginning, with Dianne Feinstein, Sandy Hook, and all the rest of this stuff, the government does. And if they get away with this big zombie drill, the government does. And if they start a bigger and broader war, civil or international, they'll kill more people. The government does. But you're supposed to be the government, you, the people. Do something. Change the channel. You need heroes? Look in the mirror. It's you. There's nobody else. That's why we're here. If you can help us out, help us out. It's nicer to do the show here, but we have to deal with realities as they come up. And part of it is I can't carry it all on my own. Not even close. Not in these hard times. We just do the best we can with what we can muster. We thank all the people who have contributed and made it go as good as it has gone for as long as it has gone. Because you're influential too. You're the heroes of the Republic and the world. This is Conspiracy Cafe. This is that channel. This is Downtown Toronto. We'll be here again next week. Same that time, same that channel. Thanks for coming out. Good night.